Hello, hello. This is my very first live streaming, so I hope this is working. The interesting thing with a live stream is that I can't see any faces, so I'm just going to jump in and hopefully people are joining and watching. So I'm running these LinkedIn Lives because learning about my breath has changed my life. And I deeply believe that so many people would really benefit from understanding how their breath works and how they can use their breath to feel more focused, have more energy, and feel more connected to themselves, the people around them, and the work that they're doing. So I've been really exploring this over the last 2 years. I've gotten certification as Oxygen Advantage Functional Breathing instructor, and now I'm also going through quite a rigorous 6-month breath science training and mentorship. So this is all just an attempt to share what I'm learning and really kind of share my excitement and my fascination with the breath. So this is a live stream. Cameras and mics are off. I can't see anyone, but if you have any questions at all, just put them in the chat. Any questions, any comments, just put them in the chat, and we can talk about them at the end, or I can address some of the questions at the end. So before we jump in to the topic of today, which is all about slow breathing, I just want to start by connecting to our breath. So we're just going to take, and I'll guide you through this, but we'll do a couple of cycles of inhaling for 3, holding for 3, and then doing a loud, audible exhale through the mouth. And we're going to do this 3 times. So I'll guide you through it. We're going to do inhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, exhale through the mouth. Just a loud, audible exhale. And the inhale is through the nose. So we'll do another cycle like this. Inhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, exhale through the mouth. One more time. Inhale, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3. Loud, audible exhale through the mouth. So I can see people are joining. That's great. We were just getting started and just taking a moment to connect to our breath as we go into the topic of today, which is all about slow breathing, which I personally find a very fascinating topic. And I hope by the end of these 25 minutes, you will agree with me, because when we talk about healthy, functional breathing, when we're at rest, it's the kind of breathing that's efficient, that's easy, that's effortless, and that's really optimized for all of our internal systems to function optimally. There are really 4 dimensions to keep in mind. And the first one is breathing through the nose. I'm sure you've probably heard a lot about this over the last few months, the importance of nasal breathing, always breathing through the nose as much as we can when we're at rest. The second dimension is gentle breathing. So when we're breathing and we're just sitting down, you shouldn't really hear or see your breathing. So it's through the nose, gentle, expansive, the idea that we should be breathing using our diaphragm and our belly, so having that kind of expansive movement of our belly and our rib cage instead of a vertical movement of our shoulders or our chests. And then the last dimension is slow. And that's really the one that I want to talk to you about today. And before we jump in kind of into the physiology and the biological mechanisms that really underpin the importance of slow breathing, I want to do a quick little exercise with everyone. And we're just going to measure our breathing rate, just so that we can really put into context what it actually means to be breathing fast or slow. So I have my phone right here. And in just a moment, I'll be setting a timer for 1 minute. And I'm going to ask you to, throughout that 1 minute, to count the number of breath cycles that you're taking. And by breath cycle, I mean 1 inhale and 1 exhale. So say I start a timer and I'm breathing. I have an inhale, exhale. I count 1. Inhale, exhale. I count 2. and so on. So you just keep doing that until I tell you to stop. Now, the idea is that you just breathe normally, okay? This is in no way a competition. This is in no way a test. Even there's no real right or wrong. This is just an assessment, just to kind of see where your breathing rate is at right now. So if you could take another normal breath in and out through the nose. And when I say go on my next exhale, I'm going to start the timer and you'll start counting your breath cycles. You can close your eyes if you want to. It can be easier to focus on your breathing. And again, it's okay if this is a tiny bit off. This is not a precise science. It's just to give us a rough measure. So close your eyes if that's easier. Take one more inhale and exhale and go. Start counting your breath cycles. All right, that was 1 minute. I hope everybody had a chance to do that. If you can just put your breathing rate in the chat for me, just so we can have a sense of where everybody's at. Just keep in mind that your real breathing rate, when you're not paying attention to it, is likely slightly higher than what you just counted, just because when you're now paying attention to it and you naturally slow it down a bit. So throughout the day, it will naturally be a little bit higher. So just to give you a sense. Now, I'm just going to share a couple of slides as we continue. And I'd love to see in the chat, oh, Gretchen, 13, great. Yeah, I'd love to see a few more from people. 8, Davina, that's great. And let me just put this into context now. In terms of what your body and your metabolism really need when you're at rest, so when you're not speaking, you're not exercising, you're not eating, like healthy breathing is roughly 12 breath cycles per minute. Gretchen, that's totally fine. Not too high, but everybody putting it in the chat is that in a really good place. So that's really great. And is unfortunately not the case for most people. Like most people tend to breathe at a much higher rate, anywhere between 15 to 20 breaths, and sometimes even up to 30 breaths. And that is considered chronic hyperventilation. Now, why is this the case? Like, why does our body not instinctively, kind of intuitively know how much air and oxygen we need? Well, it turns out our bodies have just adapted over centuries to our modern lifestyles, where we obviously live very busy, hectic lifestyles. We do a lot of sitting down. We do a lot of talking, a lot more than we used to. Processed food, overheated homes, like all of these different factors have contributed to our systems, our breathing systems, adjusting and breathing faster and more than we actually need to. And you might think, okay, fine, sounds fair, but what is the harm? Isn't it just oxygen that we're bringing into our bodies? Now, there are 2 biological mechanisms to consider here that will, I think, bring this to life for you, because it really did for me. And the first one is our breathing cycle. Now, I won't go into too much detail, but I'm assuming most of you know that we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide is not just a waste gas. It's not just something that we want to get rid of as quickly as possible. It's a very important gas. And we need a certain amount of it in our system. But when we're over breathing, so when we're breathing too fast and too much, we're not only bringing in too much oxygen, but we're also offloading too much carbon dioxide. And that has a really big impact on all of our cells and tissues including our brain, because CO2 is a very important gas that impacts the oxygenation of our cells and tissues. So we can bring in as much oxygen as we want. If we don't have enough carbon dioxide in our system, that oxygen is not getting delivered to all of our cells and tissues. And there are studies that show that there's a 30 to 40% reduction of blood flow and oxygen to the brain when there's not enough CO2 in our system. So that's huge. When our brain doesn't have enough oxygen and blood, and blood flow, it becomes hyperexcitable. It makes it difficult to focus. It makes us more anxious. So breathing fast over a short period of time, obviously when we're exercising or when we're doing certain breathing exercises, that is not a problem. That's not an issue. It becomes an issue when we breathe like this over years and years and years, and when this becomes our default breathing pattern. Now, that's the first one, the balance of oxygen and CO2, and that by breathing too much and too fast, we're disrupting that balance. The second mechanism that I think is really interesting is this idea that our body works in bidirectional mechanisms. So it's quite intuitive, right? I feel like every time I mention this to people, they're like, okay, this makes sense. How we feel impacts how we breathe, right? When we're relaxed, our parasympathetic nervous system is dominant and our breathing is gentle, deep, and slow. Just think about when you're watching a movie, for example, and what your breathing is like in that situation. When we're stressed, our sympathetic nervous system is activated and our breathing is faster, shallower, and heavier. Think about when you're rushing to get somewhere or when you're doing a presentation or writing an email. Now, this mechanism is managed by our autonomic nervous system, and we move along this kind of arousal continuum from calm to stressed throughout the day, naturally. Now, what's amazing about the breath and amazing about breath work in general is that these mechanisms also work in reverse. So yes, how we feel impacts how we breathe, but how we breathe also impacts how we feel. So when we speed up our breathing, we increase our sympathetic activation and we move up on this continuum that you see here. When we slow down our breathing, we increase parasympathetic activity and we move down this continuum. And the beauty of this concept is that we have conscious control over our breathing, so we can influence this and tap into this. The struggle is that we're usually not aware of how we breathe. We don't pay attention to it. So when our default breathing pattern is to breathe very shallow and fast, we are keeping, without knowing it, without realizing it, we are keeping our nervous system in a state of high activation and alertness. So instead of our nervous system, kind of our balance, instead of our baseline being this alert and calm and this balance between the two branches of our nervous system, our baseline moves up and we stay in this sympathetically dominated state in our nervous system, which makes us feel alert and stressed most of the time. So that's another consequence of having a fast and a fast breathing rate where we take too many breaths and too much air. So this is a bit of kind of the theory to just make you understand and put into context that fast breathing has direct consequences on all of these biological mechanisms in your system. Now, the good news. There is good news, of course. The good news is that breathing is a habit and slow breathing is a habit. And like with any habit, with enough intention and enough repetition, we can change it. Like we can retrain our nervous system and we can retrain our breathing apparatus to breathe more slowly, even when we're not thinking about it. Now, of course, in the beginning, this takes conscious effort. This is not a super quick and easy fix. It takes building awareness. It takes doing breathing exercises. But with enough kind of attention and repetition over time, this slower breathing can become our habitual breathing pattern. Now, there's a whole list of health benefits that come from slow breathing. And this is not just a theory. This is also not kind of any spiritual idea of like, just slow down and you'll feel better. No, these are actual physiological mechanisms that get impacted by slow breathing. And this is more than well established by modern science as well. And just the two big benefits that I want to call out, linked to what I was talking about before, is when we slow down our breathing, we're improving oxygenation and blood flow to all of our cells and tissues, including, and probably most importantly, the brain. We also allow for more time for gas exchange in the lungs of oxygen into the blood, carbon dioxide out. So we're just, again, optimizing that process for our entire system to work optimally. And then the second point is that slow breathing activates our vagus nerve, which is probably something you've heard about before. It's very popular these days. It's one of our biggest nerves in our system, starts in the brainstem, part of our parasympathetic nervous system, and slow breathing activates this nerve, creating all kinds of physiological reactions in your body that put you into a parasympathetic state. So that means reducing your heart rate, reducing blood pressure, increasing digestion. So all kinds of reactions that create a more calm and balanced state. So the big question is, just going to turn off the slides. The big question is, of course, how do we slow down our breathing, and how slowly exactly are we talking about? Now, I don't know if any of you have read the book Breath by James Nestor. It's an incredible book, especially if you're new to breath science and breath work. It puts a lot of things in perspective. And in the book, it's described how the perfect breath, kind of the optimal breathing rate, is considered to be 5.5 breaths per minute. So that's a 5.5 second inhale and a 5.5 second exhale. Now, for most people, this is going to be way too slow in the beginning. It definitely is for me as well. That takes quite a lot of practice. And it also just really depends on your nervous system. So that's just kind of an overall average ideal breathing rate. For most people, it's going to be anywhere between 3 to 10 breaths per minute. It really depends on your nervous system, even your lung size, your heart rate variability. So there's a lot of different factors that play there. And typically what we would do is really work together to figure out what that ideal breathing rate is. But in this session, we're just going to do a standard slow breathing rate of 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And that comes out to about 6 breath cycles per minute. So that's kind of a good place to start. This kind of slow breathing exercise is called coherent breathing. So it's an exercise where we slow down our inhales, slow down our exhales, and keep them at equal duration. So that's called coherent breathing. You might also sometimes have it, see it described as resonance breathing, which is similar but not exactly the same. Resonance breathing is where we change the duration of the exhale versus the inhale. So we lengthen the exhale versus the inhale. But in this case, we are doing coherent breathing, which is equal inhale, equal exhale, no pauses in between. So just connect the inhale to the exhale. And we're going to do it 5 seconds and 5 seconds. And I will talk you through this. So I'd like to do this over the next 3 to 4 minutes, which is especially if you're new to breathwork, this is a good enough place to start, because of course, as you can imagine, you also need to stay focused on your breathing, which can be a bit challenging in the beginning. So we're just going to start with, let's say, 3 minutes, and I'd like you to just close your eyes, sit upright, drop the shoulders, release the tension in the shoulders, release the tension in your face. And just start by connecting to your breathing. There's no need to change anything just yet. Just very relaxed and gentle breath in and out through the nose. And as you're breathing, try to remember the 4 dimensions that I talked about at the beginning. So through the nose, gentle. Make your inhales very gentle and light. And also make them expansive. Breathe into your belly. Make sure your breaths go past your chest and into your belly. And in a moment, I'll start counting so that we can slow down our breathing to 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. Now, one big, small caveat before we start is, like, Your thoughts will wander here, and that's entirely normal. When you notice that you're kind of distracted or lost in thought, just bring your awareness back to my voice, back to the counting, and just jump back in. It doesn't matter if you were lost for a few seconds, just jump back in where we are. So we'll get started now. Start by slowing down your inhale and your exhale, and then follow my counts. So we're going to do inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Now just keep counting in your own head. Keep that same rhythm. Very slow and gentle through the nose. Slow and gentle back out through the nose. Do that 10 more seconds. So take in one more breath cycle. All right. I hope that was calming and relaxing. I'd love to hear in the chat just how that felt. Was that easy, hard? Was that the first time you were doing this? How was that experience? Any kind of observations, realizations, anything at all would be great to see. So just to put this a little bit in perspective, like the intention is not to breathe like this all day long. That would be very difficult. The intention is to train awareness of your breathing so that just throughout the day, you're more aware of how fast you're breathing, especially when we're rushed and when we're stressed, so that you can consciously slow your breathing down. And the way you build that awareness is just by doing 5 to 10 minutes of these coherent breathing exercises every day. Now, as I said, like 5 in, 5 out is kind of an average coherent breathing rate. It does really depend on, it can be very personal. So if this felt too slow or too fast for you, that's totally normal. It takes some time to figure out what the right breathing rate is for you. And it's also totally fine, for example, to start with 8 to 10 breaths per minute, and then just slowly decrease over time as you become more comfortable. So my recommendation here is really to practice this. Start with short sessions if you're new to this. Even 2 minutes, it makes a difference. And it's about building up that habit. So start with 2 minutes of slow, coherent breathing, ideally sometime first thing in the morning or right before going to bed, because when you slow down your system, it helps your sleep. and also helps your breathing pattern during sleep. So we're at 25 minutes. I wanted to keep this short and kind of practical, so I can stay a bit longer for any questions that you want to put in the chat. You can also always send me a message on LinkedIn. If you want to talk more about breathing, can I share this here? I was going to post a link, but I don't think I can do this. I'll post it on the LinkedIn event page. But yeah, this was my first LinkedIn Live. I'm thinking of doing this every week. Let's see. The next one is going to be all about nostril breathing. That to me is honestly one of the craziest things I've learned about breathing in general. And yeah, I want to share more about what I've learned. So I'm doing that next week, probably same time on Thursday. Would also love any feedback that you have for me, any thoughts on the format. Yeah, it was my first time, so I would love to hear if this was helpful in any way. And yeah, I will close it here and say a couple more minutes. If anybody has any questions, just put them in the chat. Oh, great, Gretchen. Data. We love data. That's great. HRV, yes. Slow breathing has been shown to improve HRV over time. HRV is heart rate variability that has everything to do with the balance of our nervous system. And it's all about resilience and our ability to manage stress and move into relaxation in a much more fluid way. So HRV is a really important mark and a really important kind of data point to follow. Morten, as learned by you, great. In 12 months, yeah. I mean, it does take time, but the benefits that if you stick to it and you make it a habit, the benefits are absolutely incredible. And Smriti, yeah, I should really write more about my personal story here, because that's really what has gotten me into this and what has gotten me so excited about this. Gretchen, more data. I love it. Welltory app. I don't know what that is, Sal. I need to look that up. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and participating. This is recorded and will be on that LinkedIn event page. So if you joined late and you couldn't join, or you weren't able to do the breathing exercise with me, you can just watch the recording afterwards and catch up on that. But if there's no more questions or no more comments, then I will end the stream here. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Morten and Gretchen and Smriti, for the comments and the energy. All right. Bye, everyone.